Nama sreshtham manumapi shachi putram matra swarupam rupam tasyagrajamurupuri maturi goshtabhatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Prasita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Nindanatang pulakotkarena vikasat nipa prasuna chavin prodvikritya bhujadvayo hari hari tyuchairvadantang moho Nrityantam drutamasrunirjarachayai sinchantamurvi talam gayantam nijaparshadai parivritam tam gaurachandram stumah Ngaribhi paripalitah prabalitah sanandamalokitah pratyashang sumanah falodaya vidho samodamamoditah Brindaranya bhuvi prakasha madhura sarvatishai sriya Radha madhavayo pramodayatu mam ulalasa kalpa drama Jai Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Chai Gosai Rakuri Charana Bandhan Jaha hoite vignana savishta puran. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam. So we pay obeisance to Srila Jiva Goswami and we start the Anuched 7. So I missed yesterday. Actually, I went through the whole 7.1 and 7.2. But somehow or another, as usual, being technologically challenged, I somehow or another managed to not be able to save that document. So here I am doing it again. So in theory, it should be even better now that I've had a once through. Whether that will be true or not, I have no idea. But at any rate, here we are, we're talking about Bhagavat-sākṣāṭkāra, and one nice comment. It's nice to get nice comments, and so it was said that we'd crossed the Vairaj, we'd cross the river that separates the Brahma Loka from the Vaikuntha Loka, the space of Brahma light that precedes Bhagavat realization. So we had in a couple of verses it was stated actually that it was that there's a stage that one goes through before one gets to Bhagavat-sākṣāṭkāra. One actually does go through a stage of Brahma-sākṣāṭkāra. Those who are interested, I should go back and look at those a little more carefully now that I think of it, because this idea of purification, well, that's actually what we're going to do right now, is we're going to start talking about purity of heart. So let's see what Jiva Goswami has next. So the chapter overall, we're calling this the superiority of Bhagavat-sākṣāṭkāra over Brahma-sākṣāṭkāra. So that's a working title. I don't know if I'm happy with that. We will go all the way to the end, and then we'll maybe rethink that one. But anyway, let's see the first part. Well, the first part, certainly this title is descriptive, but whether we get the overall thrust of Jiva Goswami's, I like to think, look, I am a Western person, much as in my life, I've kind of straddled the world between tradition and between modern scholarship, right? And a lot of the time I've taken a modern scholarly stance. And that can be problematic at times, let's say, in dealing with people who don't have access to that kind of thinking. But then again, you have to question yourself that when I analyze in this way, well, what am I losing and what am I gaining? Right? Satyameva jayati. That's actually a principle that applies everywhere. The truth shall set you free. Yes. The truth shall always be victorious. Satyasya satyam. You are the truth of truth. Satyatmakam tvam sharanam prapadye. You who are the embodiment of truth, I bow down to you. So satyam parang dhimahi. There's a devotion to the truth. So if the devotion, can we reject the devotion to the truth in order to cover our minds with mythologies, let's say, or with any kind of cultural convention? Anyway, so the idea here, we've got the superiority of Bhagavat-sākṣāṭkāra over Brahma-sākṣāṭkāra. So the first thing is, so let's see. So cātma-sākṣātkāro dvividhaḥ, antar-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo, bahir-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇaś, and then a yathā. Okay, so he says, now what I found was interesting here, and something that just in my own mind as I'm reading through, is why did he use the word ātma-sākṣātkāra? So ātma-sākṣātkāra, because he's already started to talk about Bhagavat-sākṣātkāra. But sometimes he wants to keep this Brahma and Bhagavat are the one same Advaya Tattva. He wants to make sure that that's a kind of a realistic part of your understanding, that you actually are, intended to be totally absorbed in Krishna. to see nothing else, the one Advaya Tattva. And if you are so in his universe that any participation that you have in it is just simply as an addition to the decor of that glory. Your addition, making your little sprinkle of love reflected back onto that supreme source of love. So cātma-sākṣātkāra. So when we say ātma-sākṣātkāra, so why has he used atma? Why he didn't use? Well, if he'd said Brahma, it would have meant Brahma. If he'd meant Bhagavat, it would have meant Bhagavat. If he said Paramatma, it would have meant Paramatma. If he said Atma, well, it has to be understood another way. We have to go to Lakṣana vritti now, right? Because he's already told us in a couple of verses before, in that Vishnu Purana context, that Atma-sākṣātkāra in itself was inadequate, right? It was one of those rejected ones because it created a difference. It created a distinction. It separated oneself from the truth. So it created a dualistic sense of me and the other. So you don't want to have that. You want to lose that. So actually what he means here is that Atma-sākṣātkāra. So when you have Atma-sākṣātkāra, well, we read on, he means Bhagavat-sākṣātkāra. It's very clear, right? So why didn't he just say Bhagavat-sākṣātkāra? This is my question. So, but let's just move on and we'll leave that question hanging in the air a little bit. Because of course I can say any number of things off the top of my head. I think it was important. He wanted it to be understood that the Brahma, that what we have learned about Brahma realization is not something that we just throw away and ignore because we are dualists, or because that was also said at the end of the Vishnu Purana section, that Dvaiti no tattva darshina, the atatya darshina. The ones, the people who are dualists, they are not seeing things as they should. So it seems in that passage there we have rejection both of the abhed as well as the bhed. Anyway, so antar-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. So there's two kinds of ātma-sākṣātkāra. All right. So one is inside, so that's ātma-sākṣātkāra. And then one is external, bahir-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. So that God descends, the avirbhava, he descends, he manifests, he appears, either internally or externally. Right? That's two kinds of sākṣātkāra. The direct perception of the self, atma, is of two types. Manifest internally and manifest externally as, now here's the first one, referring to the antar-āvirbhāva. So this is Narada. Now I found interesting, this Narada story is, well, it seems quite significant. First of all, it comes right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. And second of all, it's Narada's teaching to Vyasa. So Vyasa is the author of the Bhagavatam, and he was confused about what he was supposed to do. And Narada appeared to him and gave him some teachings. And of those teachings, a large part of it, was Narada recounting his previous birth. So now this is really, in the Bhagavatam, this is really the first story, you could say. It's the original story of the Bhagavatam. It's the first story. No, well, not quite, because that's already a story within a story, right? Because the outer story now is that Vyasadeva is not feeling very happy about his achievements. He thinks something's left he hasn't done, hasn't accomplished. And Narada comes and tells him basically what it is that he hasn't achieved, what he's missed. So we understand from those passages what what Vyasa has accomplished, why he's not feeling happy, and then Narada coming and glorifying at the very beginning of the Bhagavatam the glories of describing Krishna's pastimes, of Krishna's leelas, of Krishna's virtues, of Krishna's beauty, to talk about the glories of Krishna. That was, in actual fact, the sadhana of bhakti. And so, because that's the sadhana, so he glorifies, bhakti. He glorifies prema. Yes, you're not satisfied because you haven't taught people how to love Krishna. You tell them all about self-improvement, and you told them about liberation. You taught them about how to get to higher realms of consciousness and so on. But you haven't taught them the art of loving God. So then Narada Muni, after he's spoken all these things to Vyasa, he takes him on a little bit of a side trip through the 6th chapter, telling him about his own previous lifetime. So this previous lifetime story goes on through the whole chapter. And what's kind of neat about it is that he doesn't taste more than one lifetime that he talks about. It's a couple of lifetimes saga. But this comes at the end now of that chapter. So at the end of this is supposed to be an example of antar-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. So now there's another example that's going to come up as well later on, just in a minute, right? From the same chapter, which is an earlier time. And that's a bahir-sākṣāṭkāra, bahir-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. So the bahir-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo actually, it came in the earlier portion. So we'll maybe go back to that, but let's just go through the verses here. So now this is an example of his antar-āvirbhāva. So Krishna is appearing to him in his heart. Pragāyataḥ sva-vīryāṇi tīrtha-pādaḥ priya-śravāḥ āhūta iva me śrī-grāṁ darśanaṁ yāti cetasi. Pragāyataḥ sva-vīryāṇi tīrtha-pādaḥ priya-śravāḥ āhūta iva me śrī-grāṁ darśanaṁ yāti cetasi. Right, we all know, right? Naham tishtami vaikunte. Naham tishtami vaikunte yoginam hridayena cha. Yatra me bhakta gayanti tatra tishtami Narada. So this is to Narada. Right? So Narada, this verse was prior to this verse. He said that Narada was given this veena. And actually the commentators, they're all saying this is from Linga Purana, right? And so it's known that this is a gift that Krishna himself gave to Narada. So that special instrument, right? Narada Vina, Narada Muni Bajai Vina Radhika Ramana Name. Narada Muni Bajai Vina Radhika Ramana Name. Well, yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, well, now it's not fair of me to start without being able to sing all the way through. But Narada Vino the Jivana Sudhormi Niryasa Madhuri Pura Krishna Nama Kamam Sphura Mama Rasane Rasena Sada. That this holy name, Narada Vino the Jivana. So it's giving life to Narada's Vina. It's like the Veena is just chanting the names, Radhika, Ramana. So, Sudhormi Niryasa Madhuri Pura. It's like a flow. So just imagine there Narada Muni is playing that Veena, playing the beautiful sounds, the Gandharva, the king of the Gandharvas, besides being the Muni of the gods. He's also the Gandharva of the gods. He's the Muni of the Gandharvas. So Narada Muni plays his Veena and there's a stream, a constant stream of nectar. Sudhormi Niryasa Madhuri Pura. Krishna Nama Kamang Sphura Mamarasane Rasena Sada. So prayer to the name. May that name please appear on my tongue. So anyway, Narada. So pragāyataḥ sva-vīryāṇi. So this is showing here, Narada is showing the glories of chanting Krishna's pastimes. So Krishna's pastimes, he's calling them the sva-vīryāṇi. Virya, heroism. Okay. All stories require heroism. No heroism, no story. Right? Two things are required, heroism and love. If those two things are there, then the story is complete. The rasa is complete. Without heroism, love, it's not been challenged. And without love, heroism is ultimately dry and egoistical. So, pragāyataḥ sva-vīryāṇi tīrtha-pādaḥ priya-śravāḥ. So he was singing the glories of Krishna's glorious heroic pastimes, his stories. Tīrtha-pādaḥ priya-śravāḥ, names of Krishna. His feet are the source of all the holy waters. And priya-śravāḥ, he is delightful to hear about. So, āhūta iva me śrī-grhaṁ darśanaṁ yāti cetasi. So just as though he is being called by me. So I'm chanting his name, so yes, I am calling. So as if called by him. As if called by me, he appears in my heart. So that is the thing. So he was as though he was able to call Krishna into his heart every time by playing, by doing kirtan. So now he wants Vyasadeva to continue that kind of thing. So when I sing of the heroic activities of the Lord, whose glory is delightful to the ears, and whose feet are the source of all sacred waters, he quickly appears in my heart as if called there by me. Now the second one, okay, well look at this. So here's the second one. So the second one comes from a chapter that has been, has also been a one that has, Jiva Goswami has liked very much this chapter. where the Kumaras come and the curse of Jaya and Vijaya. So a big part of that chapter is that the Kumaras were fixed in Brahman realization. But when they saw Narayana and the odor of the tulsi garland that he was wearing, or the tulsi that had touched Krishna's feet, that odor, that fragrance entered into their nostrils, and it shattered their meditation on Brahman, gave them a whole new perspective on things. So that was the verse. He's only quoted 1/4 of the verse. So I'll just read what he's quoted. So it says, Te, so Te means the 4 Kumaras. Achakshata, they saw. Akshi Vishayam, right before their eyes. Sva-samādhi-bhāgyam. Okay, so that's a really cool word. This is why Sanskrit is such a cool language. Because for poetic purposes, you can create interesting combinations of words. Anyhow, so sva-samādhi-bhāgyam. Bhagya means good fortune. And samadhi, well, they were all absorbed in samadhi, right? They were in the samadhi of jnana realization. So they were, but here he says it was their good fortune as a result of their samadhi. This was good fortune that they got as a result of their samadhi, was to be able to see him directly in front of their eyes. So that thing which they had been meditating on in their hearts, right, as Brahman, when they saw Narayan, then that impersonal understanding of Brahman was enhanced by the virtues, the qualities, the fragrance, the beauty, the personality, everything that was there in this supreme person. So they beheld him, the fulfillment of their trance, become apparent to their eyes, as he arrived, accompanied by his own associates, who brought with them the paraphernalia for his service. Swan-like in beauty, he was being fanned by 2 whisks, the pleasing breeze of which shook the pearls that dangled from the white umbrella, appearing like drops of nectar falling from the full moon. Not bad. Nice scene. So it was entrance, grand entrance. Krishna comes in. He saw Krishna, but how did they, when the Kumaras saw Krishna, they arrived in Vaikuntha, right? So this is in Vaikuntha. So in Vaikuntha, you're a little bit like a South Indian temple, right? And so you have the deities coming out on carriages all the time, and lots of loud blasting of shanais and other instruments to accompany the Lord in his little excursion outside the walls. And so the whole entourage, the royal entourage. And we could have it, of course, Bollywood style choreography. So he was being fanned by whisks and so on. So the point is that they saw him, he was the fulfillment of their trance, become apparent to their eyes. That is what he's trying to say. So now this is our very interesting personalist sadhana. So now you can't do this really without what we're calling it an alambana, right? So you have to have a very definite, specific form. So most of the time in the sandarbhas and so on, so, and this form business is a very interesting thing. And I'm, that those of you who know a little bit about me, I've written some historical articles that have been that people have found interesting. At any rate, so you see that there are many things that happen. History means to notice things coming and going. Who came in the room and who left the room. It's just remarking on the changes that take place. And to be able to, recalibrate your understanding of the present through having a little bit of a better understanding of the past. To see how we got to where we are now. What is it that makes Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the 21st century what it is, as compared to what it was in the 16th century, and what does Gaudiya Vaishnava history have to tell us about who we are as devotees of Radha and Krishna? And also so that we can decide, there are hundreds of branches of Gaudiya Vaishnavism already. And the more that people are intellectually inclined who decide to study this Gaudiya Vaishnavism and to try to understand it as having a little bit more profundity than mere strange kinds of mind games and navel gazing and those kinds of things that take one away from a life of paying attention to the world. So, antar-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo and bahir-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. The antar-āvirbhāva means is that we generally put that first. That's why the samādhi-bhāgyam, that was also put in the second verse, because it was the result of their inner, first seeing him inside, that later on they got to see him outside, in one way or another. So, now, what does he go on to next? Subject. tatrāntaḥ-sākṣātkāre yogyatā śrī-rudra-gīte. So now, here's a verse from the song of Śrī-Rudra. So this is about the whole story of the prachetas, who were another one of these wayward. They had a great deal of difficulty getting these people to be prajapatis. The four Kumaras, they didn't want to grow up. Brahma wanted them to go forth and multiply, and they said, we're not going to ever reach adolescence. Narada just became a sage. So all the sons, Brahma was having difficulty getting his sons to take up the job of going forth and multiplying. So amongst those who were wayward were the prachetas. So here the prachetas, though, they got the vision of Rudra. And so this is what he says, Rudra's Gita. Nayasya chittam bahir-artha-vibhramaṁ tamo-guhāyāṁ vishuddhamāvishat yad-bhakti-yogānugṛhītam anjasā munir-vichaste nanu tatrāntaḥ gatim. Nayasya chittam bahir-artha-vibhramaṁ tamo-guhāyāṁ vishuddhamāvishat yad-bhakti-yogānugṛhītam anjasā munir-vichaste nanu tatrāntaḥ gatim. So, this is the tatrāntaḥ-sākṣātkāre yogyatā, śrī-rudra-gīte. So now he's going to go into a couple of things. So what makes a person eligible to see God? Okay, this is the question we're getting here now. All right, so first of all, it is possible. But you have to know what the eligibility is. You have to know what it is that you're, the base territory. So we've talked in Priti Sandarbha, we've had some idea about the kind of character a devotee is trying to cultivate. So the first thing here he says is Vishuddham. Well, the first thing he says is Nayasya, so one whose mind, chitta, is not bahir-artha-vibhramaṁ. So the first quality of this chitta is that he is na bahir-artha-vibhramaṁ. So he doesn't become distracted, vibhramam, by bahir-artha, by external, let's say, desires. It could be a lot more than that. Indriyartha, it could be the sense object, other goals, right? So one who has bahir-artha, one who has external goals. When one's young, one can have numerous goals, but the overall plan should be towards one goal. And as one grows older, one should refine that goal to its main purpose. So that when one comes to the end of one's life, one's main purpose is one's total being. That one's, in terms of what one is, and of what one has become, and of where one hopes and wishes for one's mind to be. Then you cultivate that and you focus on that with ever-increasing precision as you approach death. At any rate, so he says it's bahir-artha-vibhramaṁ. So vibhramaṁ means like a mistake, right? So to go into the bahir-artha-maninaha, another word that's used, the bahir-artha-maninaha. So they think that there's some value. They think that there's some real value in the external things, right? So all the things that the people, yanisha sarva-bhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami. Yasyang jagriti bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. So your day and night, right? For the people who are bahir-artha-manina, their day is our night, and our day is their night. So for us, it's a mistake to escape into the territory of non-Krishna. As soon as you see something that's non-Krishna, then you are bahir-artha-manina. So what is a bahir-artha? That's a big subject. You can also call it an anartha. Right? All the different categories of anarthas. So tamo-guhāyāṁ na vishuddham avishat. So being pure, it never entered. So it's interesting here that he's used the past tense, avishat, entered, or become absorbed in. But never got absorbed, so it's in the past tense, which is rather strange. Not the usual kind of construction here. But they say, but this pure mind, which has never entered into confusion about external sense objects and external purposes to life, hasn't focused in, right? And has never succumbed it never become absorbed in the cave of darkness. What is this cave of darkness? Well, the commentators are not so helpful. Well, the basic idea seems to be they've taken a yoga interpretation. It was Sridhar who first says it, and I don't see anybody arguing with it. But it does seem to be require something more. Tamo-guhāyāṁ, he says that in meditation that one is not affected by stupor. So that's kind of a technical thing, but I guess he didn't want to look at it as that the tamo-guna was worse than that, because tamo-guna can get pretty bad, right? So to have tamo-guna while you're doing your meditation and you nod off a little bit, that seems like rather not a big deal about the tamo-guna. But at any rate, just a little bit, not a little bit, there's only a little bit of tamo-guna left, and not even that. All right, that's the point that he's making. Not so much tamo-guna left. So such a person, yad-bhakti-yogānugṛhītam anjasa. So who's this chittam as described so far, being pure and not being distracted by external goals, but remaining strong and not getting absorbed into the darkness of forgetfulness of one's true nature as an eternal servant of God. So that is because he is bhakti-yogenānugṛhītam. He has been blessed by bhakti yoga. He has been blessed by the practices of devotion. He has been blessed by a devotee who has shown him the path of devotion. And so that makes that mind is bhakti-yogenānugṛhītam. So now that is obviously what Jiva Goswami is going to get at here. But for the time being, he's saying, let's say first of all, so then Munir, the four Kumaras, then Vichashte saw, Nanu, did they not, Tatra, in that very place, Te Gatim, your Gatim. So now Gatim, what is Gatim? So Gatim is one of these words that has many meanings. So here now the thing is, he's seeing, they saw Tatra Te Gatim, they saw your, well, Gatim, the basic meaning of Gatim is movement. So they saw your movement. But Gatim does not usually get used that way. Gatim here would mean, it could mean the destination. That this is the destination. This is where not where the going ends, right? So where are you going? That's your gati. Gati can also be a way of moving, right? Gaja gati, the way that Krishna moves, like an elephant. That takes a while for people who haven't lived amongst elephants. Anyway, Gaja gati, right? Krishna moves like an elephant. He has the gait of an elephant. It's a very rhythmic side-to-side motion. That's what an elephant walks like. And because it's so big, and so it's a very rolling motion, very smooth. So that's Gajagati. That's Krishna's Gajagati. So what does it mean? So here, generally speaking, well, they said, see his Leela. So you could take it either way. They saw him as being the ultimate destination, or they saw the beauty of his movements and became attracted to that, right? That's what they could see. So here he says, a sage whose mind is pure. is not diverted to external objects, does not fall into stupor while meditating or remembering Bhagavan, and blessed by the yoga of devotion, easily and certainly sees your movements. Tatra teshāṁ purvoktānaṁ satāṁ bhakti-yogenānugṛhītam vishuddham yasya chittam bahyeshu arteshu bhrantam na bhavati tamo-rūpāyāṁ guhāyāṁ cha na vishati sa munir ity-ādikaṁ cha vyakyayam. So tatra, so the tesham purvoktānaṁ satam. So where is this bhakti-yoga-nugṛhītam? It comes from some sages that were mentioned in earlier verses. So they came into the company of saints, and as a result, as a devotee, he becomes into the company of saints. He comes into the company of devotees. And he likes what he sees, he likes what he hears. And so if that fortunate person takes up the path, right, then that means that he's bhakti-yogenānugṛhītam. He's been blessed by learning about the science of bhakti yoga, of how to make his mind God absorbed, how to fill his mind with God, how to fill his senses with God. That's what the devotee is learning to do. So one whose mind has become, this verse should be explained as follows. One whose mind that has become pure after being blessed by the devotional yoga that is possessed by the previously mentioned saints. They had it. They passed it on. Does not become misled by external sense objects. So having been blessed, he does not become misled by sense objects, and does not fall into the pit of ignorance. Is a muni who sees Bhagavan's movements, i.e. his pastimes. So that was a little bit addition there, following the commentaries, other commentaries following Śrīdhara, following maybe even, I'll have to go back. I really shouldn't use Vishwanath Chakravarti without making it clear that that's the case. One has to be a little bit careful with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Not in the sense that he's going to say anything dangerous, but you have to remember that Vishwanath Chakravarti is coming, let's say, 100 years after Jiva Goswami. So there's been a little bit of a time to think about things and to introspect and so on. So it's good to keep the two apart, because in some places they do disagree. Right. So bahir-sākṣātkāre'pi vyatirekena tathaiva naradam prati śrī-bhagavatoktam. So now here we back to Narada again. So now he's saying that this is bhakti. So we just had an example, right? That he's saying, so what he was saying before, right? That tatrāntaḥ-sākṣātkāre yogyatā śrī-rudra-gīte. So we were getting that. So that was it was a description of the muni who is eligible for seeing God within. Right? Mind is not diverted to external objects. He does not fall into a stupor while engaged in meditation, and has been blessed by the yoga of devotion, easily and certainly sees your movements, whatever that means. Okay. Open to interpretation. So, so now he goes on to the next one. Now we're talking about bahir-sākṣātkāra. So, well, it goes without saying, if you need a pure heart and a pure mind in order to be able to see Krishna within, then it stands to reason, of course, that you're going to have a pure heart and a pure mind to see him with your external senses. Right? That's the degree that you'll actually see with your external senses God standing in front of you. So this one is also coming from the story of Narada Muni from the same chapter as the previously given one, which was, as you recall, was for antar-āvirbhāva-lakṣaṇo. So now this one is for the bahir-sākṣāṭkāra vyatirekena. So now this is a counter-example, right? So a counter-example, so that means that if you don't do it, then you don't get the result. If you do it, you get the result. If you don't do it, you don't get the result. That's the anvaya and vyatireka. So here this is a vyatireka. So what is the vyatireka? Well, what happened here was that Narada is just a young boy, and he's been traveling all over India, visiting holy places and doing sadhana, going to the holy places and doing all kinds of difficult sadhanas, and really becoming very powerful in his meditation and becoming powerful in his practice. And finally he gets blessed by a vision. He's in his meditation, by the power of his mind, he's keeping an image of God in his heart. And then suddenly that image that he was meditating on with such deep concentration suddenly disappeared. And when it disappeared, then he came snapped out of his meditation, that which I was absorbed in my samadhi. I was absorbed in meditating on that form of Krishna. And now suddenly it was gone. So he woke up, he opened his eyes, and when he opened his eyes there, he was astonished to see Krishna standing in front of him. But just for a moment, just a flash, like a flash of lightning in the sky, it was there and then it was gone. So immediately when that happened, even though Narada is a young boy, he was a greatly advanced yogi, he immediately sat back into his yogic position. He immediately returned to his, different techniques of returning his mind to the concentration point, remembering his mantras, breathing, concentrating on his breath. And there he is trying to return to that deep meditation on Krishna's form. And suddenly he heard a voice. And now what the voice said. All right. So now this is the voice of God to young lad Narada, a real hero of sadhana, out there, a young lad, not even a full-grown man, and he's braving the elements like a hero. And finally he gets this vision of Narayan. And then Narayan says to him a moment or two later, when he realizes that he can't get it back as he's seen it somehow or other, perhaps something is there, but he hasn't, there's a frustration that what he saw and what he has in his meditation, that they are not of equal grandiosity. So what does that voice say? The disembodied voice, a voice from the sky. It says, Hanta. asmin janmani bhavan mamang drashtum iharhati. This is, Narayan was being very polite. This is, Narada is only a boy, right? And yet Narayan is saying to him, Bhavan, using the polite pronoun, honorable sir. And he says, Hanta, alas. But then he says, Mang drashtung ma arhati. You don't deserve, you most certainly don't deserve. There is a prohibition against you. You don't deserve to see me again in this lifetime. Hantasmin janmani bhavan nama mang drashtum arhati. So, where does he go on? Oh, and he's not kind after that either. Avipakva-kaṣāyāṇāṁ durdarśo'haṁ kuyoginam. Now he's, this is like a mixed blessing. He gave him a vision of himself, just a flash, but he wants to know, wants Narada to know precisely that he got that flash so that he would get down to work, right? Because he says, avipakva-kaṣāyāṇāṁ. So kaṣāya means the covering, like the covering. So when, let's say, a fruit is ripe, then its covering peels off. So, avipakva-kaṣāyāṇāṁ. So those who are not mature, those who have not fully matured in going through all the imperfections and impurities that lie within their gross and subtle natures. So, avipakva-kaṣāyāṇaṁ durdarśo'haṁ kuyoginam. I am not easy for them. They don't get to see me so easily. I am difficult to see, or I'm impossible to see. It is impossible for people to see me if they are still not mature in terms of their self-purification. And kuyoginam. So what here we can, kuyogi can be a pretty bad word actually. To call someone a kuyogi, that means someone who is, let's say, blackening the name of yoga. I don't know if he wants to say that's going on here, but no, certainly not. I wouldn't think it for a moment. But at any rate, a yoga person who has not perfected his practice of yoga, let's put it that way, who is an imperfect yogi, who hasn't got the discipline, one of the meanings of yoga, a discipline. So one whose discipline is not strong. They don't get to see me. So the point of that verse was here, he's saying by vyatireka, that it's being said that you cannot get darshan if you are still attached to the senses and if you are lacking discipline and seriousness about your goal. So, purification of the heart is a prerequisite for bahir-sākṣātkāra. That was the point that was being made. So even after having seen Bhagavan externally, the same requirement of purity of heart mentioned by Shiva in the previous example was spoken of by Bhagavan to Narada as an example of the opposite. Oof, that's not so clear. An example of the opposite. As a counter example is really what it is. It's a counter example. An example, so the one example, a muni doesn't, he's been blessed by yoga, so he doesn't engage in any kind of sinful nonsense activity. He's a good boy. So here also it's saying that if you're not, that he said that you can only have external vision of me if you are, if you're, for instance, avipakva-kaṣāyāṇāṁ, so you're vipakva-kaṣāyāṇāṁ, and you're not a kuyogi or a suyogi. So the example is given. So it's an example of it's a counter example, but right. Alas, you will not be able to see me in this life because it is difficult for those whose hearts are still impure and who have not attained perfection in yoga to do so. It is difficult for those whose hearts are still impure and who have not attained perfection in yoga to do so. So here we go. So we have the commentary by Babaji. So after explaining that Bhagavat-sākṣāṭkāra is the true mukti and the true real purushartha, Sri Jiva Goswami begins by explaining that it is of two types and the qualifications needed for it. The inner Sākṣāṭkāra is an inspiration within one's heart, like a lucid dream. In fact, it is not easy for a common person to make a distinction whether someone is having an inner Sākṣāṭkāra or is mentally abnormal, having some kind of hallucination. All right. Well, that's something that we're going to have to face sooner or later in this discussion. Right? What is actually going on? So this is the realm of psychology now. And I'm going to talk about that more. But for the time being, I'm going to try to stick to what's here. Right? So what is this Sākṣāṭkāra that we can expect to have? Well, Babaji gives an example of a lucid dream, a kind of a hallucination. It seems like a hallucination, right? But it seems to the devotees to be very real. And actually, a devotee who's engaged in practicing, he's on the lookout for this kind of thing. He might get, emotional and say, "My Lord, why are you not revealing yourself to me?" Anyway, so the first example is of Narada Muni, who attained spiritual form after giving up his material body. Krishna then gave him a stringed instrument called a veena. Whenever he sings about Bhagavan, the latter becomes manifest in his mind as if Narada is calling him. This is because Bhagavan and his name are non-different. The second example is of the four Kumaras who are devoted to Brahman, who were devoted to Brahman. They went to Vaikuntha to see Vishnu, but were stopped at the seventh entrance. They got angry at the gatekeepers. When Sri Vishnu came to know about it, he walked to the entrance gate. The verse from this chapter of the Bhagavatam cited in this Anucheda describes the experience of the Kumaras. They understood that Bhagavan, standing before them, is the personified form of Brahman that they were used to experiencing within the heart. This incident was discussed in Priti Sandarbha. Priti Sandarbha is mostly concerned with the Brahma Bhagavan question, no? So next, the Jiva Goswami cites a verse spoken by Shiva to the Prachetas to give the requisite qualification to have Sākṣāṭkāra of Bhagavan. The real qualification is bhakti. So there's bhakti-yogenānugṛhītaṁ, right? Bhakti-yogenānugṛhītam. The real qualification is bhakti. Without bhakti, no one can have real Sākṣāṭkāra. As Sri Krishna tells Uddhava, I am known only by bhakti. Bhaktyaham. I am known only by bhakti. Bhakti comes by the grace of a devotee or Bhagavan himself. When it descends into the heart of a devotee, then he or she becomes qualified to see Bhagavan, internally as well as externally. However, it depends on the will of Bhagavan when he wants to manifest himself to such a devotee. The material senses do not have the power to perceive Bhagavan. They can only perceive material objects and qualities. But when the intrinsic potency of Bhagavan descends into the senses, then they get the ability to perceive him. Although the devotee is perceiving him with the assistance of Bhagavan's intrinsic potency, he feels as if he is doing it with his own senses. This is because the senses and the intrinsic potency function as a single unit. All right, well, that looks like we're going to stop there for today. So I think I'm finally getting into some kind of a rhythm here. And so I will meet you again here tomorrow. As you can see, there are many problems come. We just had a big rainstorm, and it looks like power is down everywhere, and there's no internet connection right now. So I'll have to probably wait until tomorrow morning before I can send this out. All right. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam.